looking at the crowd here today, and I think that compared to a lot of the people who are sitting here in this room with me, I might be considered someone who's chronically online. I don't know if I should actually be proud of this, or maybe you'd be impressed, but my brain sponges up TikTok trending sounds, pop culture references, memes, viral content with minimal effort. I spend roughly a quarter of my waking life on some variation of social media or entertainment app. And I think we can all agree, I'm pretty active online. So it should come to nobody's surprise that in 2020, I was one of 1.7 million people to join this Facebook group. An ant colony roleplay. I bet some of you are asking, why would someone make this group? And why would people join it? But honestly, at the time, I was thinking more, why not? Everybody was doing it. All of my friends were in that group. It was very low risk, low harm, low effort, and it was a really easy way to get away from the stress of the pandemic at the time. Looking back, I was only active on the group for a week, but it was a really good example of how easily I, and probably many of these other people, could get caught up in groupthink online. But not all Facebook groups are made the same, because Facebook also houses groups like this. Not as silly as my little ant role play, I guess, but it really speaks to the range that these platforms can have in terms of audience and groups. Now, groupthink, I hope you're all familiar, but if you're not, groupthink, if you're not familiar, is basically when groups of people start to think and agree so much that it begins to affect their individuality, their creativity, sometimes their common sense too. It's more a human thing than an internet thing, so I'm not saying that it can't happen offline, but social media has this really cool ability of supercharging the way that groupthink happens, accelerating the rate at which it happens too. And one way that we see this happen a lot online is viral trends and challenges, like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Hopefully this is more familiar to you. If not, basically challengers would pour a bucket of ice water over their heads, hoping to simulate the feeling of having Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, I don't doubt that the 17 million people who joined this challenge in 2014, or the people who are bringing it back in 2025, have good intentions. They mean well. But with these trends and challenges, at a certain point, it becomes more about being seen participating than actually making a difference. To me, at least, this is performative groupthink at its finest, presenting itself online. Some might even say it's a form of slacktivism, or activism that has very low effort, low risk, low commitment, low cost. Now, social media has been at the center of my life, both professional and personal life, mostly by choice because I chose that as my research topic, so my mistake. But in that time, I've had a lot of conversations with people about their lived experiences navigating the online space. And one that I still think about today was with an interviewee who told me that they personally never participate in Instagram story chains. I hope you know what those are. But they usually advocate for something. And that wasn't because they were a bad person or they didn't believe in anything, but they kind of saw it as virtue signaling. And I remember I had this aha moment because that really spoke to me. I've been online for more than half of my life. And in that time, I've probably participated in my fair share of Instagram story chains. I've seen what they are, what their equivalents are on different platforms. And again, they come from a really good place, but sometimes they can have a message attached. One that says, don't break the chain, or I can see who's choosing to skip out on this. And I find this really encapsulates what social media has become today. It now fosters this invisible pressure or obligation to pick a side, to post or say the right thing, or to keep up with the rest of the world, just so we don't get called insensitive or out of touch. And that's how all of these trends and challenges have come about. Some of them are great, they have a call to action, they're there for awareness, and they work. Others kind of detract from the original message. And a few of them can even lead users down some extremist rabbit holes. Now, slacktivism is just one part of this piece. The internet has so many other phenomena that are similar. We have slacktivism, bandwagoning, cancel culture. All of these show how people online tend to flock together to either agree on something or disagree with someone. And if this is the everyday makeup of the internet, and we grow increasingly online as people, I think it's important to ask ourselves, are our opinions still our own, or are they a regurgitation of what we're seeing online? We can scroll, like, repost, but when was the last time you saw something on your feed that truly challenged you as an individual? Now, again, groupthink is a very human thing. I'm not trying to attack users for using social media the way they want to. I'm on social media as well. But it just doesn't help that these platforms are built to capitalize on our weaknesses or our human factors. And they do this using three things: algorithms, echo chambers, and gamification. Now, algorithms sound super technical, but in the context of social media, we can describe them as a mirror, one that reflects our interests back at us. Using the content we engage with as a reference, our platforms put us into buckets of who they think we are, based on our political views, our values, our age, our gender, anything they can scrape from our data, basically. And what they do with this information is they put us into filter bubbles that reinforce the presence of echo chambers. Now, in these echo chambers, we only hear voices and opinions that match our own. And while it's not bad to talk to like-minded people or find them, it's great. When this is the only thing that we hear, it begins to unconsciously affect how we think. We become more resistant to things that we no longer align with. And instead of social media covering this wide gradient spectrum of perspectives and views, we're pushed into these distinct cut-up circles, cut-up groups that no longer bleed into each other. Finally, social media does this really cool thing. It gamifies the user experience, using engagement as a currency. How do you feel when someone likes your Instagram post, or when somebody retweets something you said? I bet it feels great. I know I feel that way, and I bet everybody in this room receives some form of validation from social media engagement online. In fact, it's been linked to dopamine release, which can unconsciously make us more reliant on our platforms the more we use them. Now, it might not seem that serious because it's just social media or you're using your platforms just for entertainment, but that might not be the case for the rest of the world. Whether we want to admit it or not, more and more people are relying on social media as a source of information and of news, and what they find on the internet affects how they act off of it. We've seen this in election outcomes, in public acts of violence, in increased discrimination against racialized and minority groups, showing that social media and groupthink together can have some serious repercussions. Moreover, platforms are basically a black box. We don't know exactly how they're built and exactly how they work. All we can do is trust that they function for our benefit as users. But it's important to remember that engagement can be manufactured, and that these are privately owned platforms that can form quiet alliances with politicians or with partisan media who could really use from manipulating public perception. The thing is, we don't lose ourselves all at once. It happens slowly, gradually, without us even noticing. We're put into our bubbles and we feel comfortable. But what happens when all we do is react to what's put in front of us, to content that isn't chosen by us, but by a few lines of code? If we keep letting our algorithms determine the people we become, are we truly still ourselves? But In this day and age, I really can't tell you to quit social media. I think everybody in this room knows I'm not going to take that advice. Not with my screen time. And to be fair, social media has brought a lot of good. I know for me, it lets me feel connected and involved with my family, who lives halfway across the world in a different time zone. And for other people, it's given them access to information on news, culture, social issues that go past their national borders. What once took a few weeks or days to learn now takes a couple of seconds, and I think that's great. But as social media continues to cement itself as an integral presence in our lives, I think it's important that we start to reclaim our agency as individuals. You see, social media, like most technology, is built for our convenience, and it's good at doing its job. That's totally fine. We can keep using our platforms as tools, but at the same time, I hope we don't become the people who start to parrot what we see online like it's the absolute truth. To do that, we can try a couple of things. I'm a type A, so I love actionable steps. So step one could be interrogating your feeds. Start by asking yourself some questions. What bubbles might I be part of? And how are my platforms perceiving me? I find that when I take a step back and I think about it, I can see how X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, they all see me as some variation of a young girl with specific political views, certain values, interests, likes, hobbies. And then I take this information and I use it to do step two, which is step out of your bubbles. Follow or engage with accounts or people that challenge your views. Diversify your sources, even if they're outside of the platforms that we've come to rely on so much. It's not going to be easy. It's an extra step. Might not be a great way to protect your peace or de-stress at the end of the day, but it's a really easy and accessible way to discover personal biases that you might not have known were there and begin to question them. Finally, meet people outside the group chat. There is a resurgence of people who want to meet others organically and who want to start building communities the old way. So this really couldn't come at a better time. By having conversations that aren't measured in likes or shares, we might actually be able to inspire ideas that only real-world dialogue could. In the end, social media is here to stay. It's getting better at knowing who we are, getting our attention, and keeping us hooked. And the rate at which that happens is out of our control. But what we can do is choose how we show up online. We can be more mindful, more curious, and a little less eager to jump on the next bandwagon that rolls by. Because in a space like social media, where it's easy to follow the trail, kind of like ants drawn to a scent without question, I think now more than ever, it's important that we stop, we think, and we resist the pull of the crowd. We don't have to follow a trail just because it's there, or do what everybody else is doing. Be different. Sometimes standing still is the first step towards moving in the right direction. Thank you.